Hey everybody, we are back here on Bookends at the beautiful Red Rock Racing Sportsbook. First, I want to wish everybody a happy new year. I hope you had a happy and a healthy start to the new year. And Jason and I were here at the Red Rock Racing Sportsbook for the sports betting podcast Bookends. That's powered by STN Sports. And I think first, Jay, as the new year rolled around and toward the end of last year, I want to talk about we've got a new STN Sports betting app.
Yeah, December 19th, we pulled the trigger and launched the new STN Sports betting app, and kind of out with the old, in with the new, and we've got some incredible new features on the app. I think the menu has absolutely exploded from what we were offering on the old app, and we were in love with the menu that we were able to offer on the old app and the number of props that we were able to offer, but now it's just absolutely unbelievable. Even the number of sports that we're booking, down to women's basketball, European basketball, European hockey. The soccer menu has absolutely exploded, and I know that you have a couple of features and things that you love, but for me, the best thing about the new app is the same game parlay, something that we didn't offer on the old app that our guests have been chiming about for years.
They ask about it all the time, right?
You know, the ability, when I say same game parlay, we talk about player props within a game. Those were not normally parlayable. You weren't able to parlay, call it for the Buffalo Bills, a Josh Allen to have over 2.5 touchdown passes, for Stephon Diggs to have over 100 yards receiving, for him to score a touchdown, and the Bills to win, and against the Dolphins this week, Tyreek Hill to score a touchdown. So you put all those into one parlay, and those are what's considered correlated, but it gives you the price on that parlay. You're able to place those bets. So that's available on not only our pro football, college football, basketball, hockey, soccer. You're going to see that same game parlay option. It's bright pink on the app. Give it a try. Something to select. I think you'll fall in love with the same game parlays.
And so many guests actually have asked about that. You're absolutely right. I love the live feature too. That right when the game kicks off, it goes right to that live feature. And I've heard that it's probably one of the best live options in the state right now that's offered. And the one wallet. That now, maybe you want to dabble in race just a little bit for the Triple Crown races or Breeders' Cup. Now you sign up and you have that capability for a big race day to dabble a little bit and have some fun. But also, I know a lot of people have asked about, I'm not sure how to figure out or navigate the search key. That A to Z button, you hit that, and that really brings up the entire menu of what there is to bet on. So just kind of play with it a little bit and kind of work your way through it. If you have any questions, of course, you can let Jay and I know, and we'll kind of help you guys or any of our teams at any of our properties. But there's a lot of cool features on it and a lot of good things to come as well.
Yeah, there's still some things that we haven't launched with yet that we're getting ourselves used to what we have with the app, and you're going to see a match of the day where you get some bonuses on a specific match. You're going to have free bet bonuses that come in there on the app. So again, some features that are up and coming that, again, you have to download the new app, give it a try. A couple of things, we always talk about technology grows and it gets better, but it's also changed. And one of the things that we all struggle with is we love doing things a certain way. We knew how the old app worked and the way it looked, and now we've got that change into the new app. And as Chuck said, I think the more and more that you play around with it, the more and more that you have fun with the app, you learn the settings. I like to use the bubble feature at the top where it has the sports across the top and a bubble feature, and it also features some of the marquee matchups that day. Our team is going in and making it a featured game.
Feature too,
and so those are at the top for you to find, whether it's a golf tournament, an MMA match, or a college football national championship. Those are really readily able for you to find. And so I think that when you spend some time on the app, you're really going to fall in love with it, and you're really going to fall in love with the menu that we have. And even more beneficial to the player is our parlay payouts. So one of the biggest changes from the old app to the new app is the parlay payouts, in that your parlays are paying true money line odds. When you take your parlay and you times it by the money line, that's the payout you're going to get, versus the old system you would get default prices. So at the end of the day, look for this. Your parlays are going to pay more.
Right. And I know, like we both commented, that it is changed, but give it a week or two. Don't just get on it and say, I'm not sure. I was familiar with the other app. I've heard a lot of guests who initially said that, who've now come back to me and said, I freaking love this. It's so cool because there's so many different features on it, so many cool things, so many added events. The menu is off the chart. So give it a week or two and really play on it, but check out the live feature again. That has been the number one thing that I've heard so many positive things about. Check that out.
And the new sign-up bonus is still out there. So again, if you don't have the app, you haven't downloaded it yet, get the app, and when you got that 10% up to $100 on a new sign-up bonus.
All right, so now we're going to dive into the fun stuff, and that's the college football national championship game that's less than a week away. I know that we kind of talked about it, and did the committee get it right or didn't they? Georgia to be left out should they have been in it. But you look at the two teams that are left, Washington and Michigan, both 13-0, undefeated during the regular season. You look at the two playoff games, they were phenomenal. I mean, we've seen blowouts in the past, but both these two games kept you on the edge of your seat. It's a huge contrast in style where Washington can light it up and with Penix score anywhere in the field from the field, and Michigan just smashes you in the mouth, and they're big in the trenches. I think it's a really intriguing matchup, and we've seen the number open at 4 to go to 4.5, back to 4, 4.5, ping pong a little bit. Early action on Washington on the money line, some value there. And don't forget, Washington opened up, Jay, at 45-1 about a year ago to win the national championship this year. So if you're sitting with a ticket like that, you're definitely smiling. And I know we have some liability on Washington. So there's a lot of you guys that have those tickets out there on the Huskies.
Yeah, and obviously I think they relish this underdog role, and I think that they recognized it when they went and they were
Wait a minute, isn't a Husky a dog?
Husky the dogs?
Yeah.
But they were the big underdog in the Pac-12 championship against Oregon. Were able to overcome that. They get, somewhat what they felt disrespected in being an underdog to Texas, and now they see themselves as an underdog to the Wolverines. And I think that they're loving that role and they're using that. And what an incredible offense that we're seeing between Odunze and Penix and Dylan Johnson. The running back's been electric. We'll see how his health shapes up through this week. He's a little bit banged up. We'll see if he's able to go. But when you look at the matchup, and you talked about Michigan with that running game with Corum, Michigan is going to be able to run the football on Washington. Just about everybody that Washington has played has been able to run the football on Washington, and yet they're still undefeated and they've been able to overcome that.
Actually, throw on them too. I mean, you look at their defense, and they're ranked outside of the top 100 in the country. But a big piece of that, and this is what Washington says, is that we've been up by so many points in a lot of cases. The opposition is throwing every single play, and it's heading up to that. But it is a huge contrast in styles. I really think.
If Michigan's able to run the football, Washington's going to have to come back and match them point for point. And when you look at what that Michigan front was able to do against Jalen Milroe against Alabama early in the first half, and they had 6 sacks against Alabama in that first half, and that doesn't bode well for Penix, because what Washington wants to do is get the ball downfield to those receivers in Odunze and Polk. They're definitely deep threats.
But how many times has Penix been sacked?
But Penix has only been sacked 11 times on the entire year. Washington's offensive line is absolutely fantastic. So I really think that that's where the game is going to be won or lost, is whether that Michigan defensive front can get to Penix or if Washington can hold that Michigan front off. Because if you give Michael Penix time, he came in second in the Heisman Trophy voting, with those electric receivers, that Michigan backfield is not going to be able to cover those guys, and I think that they could be in trouble. So from that standpoint, if we talk about Michigan being able to run the ball and score on Washington, and Washington having success in the passing game, maybe we're looking at a high total, because 56 isn't all that high when we look at the ability for both these two teams to score. And the other thing that's always going to come into play here is we didn't see these two teams have perfect games in their semifinals. Michigan has got to figure out what they're doing with their punt returners, as they had 2 muffed punts. They also missed a field goal and had an extra point that they botched. And Washington as well had a muffed punt. They did force Texas into a couple of fumbles. So it's going to be a big decision in this game as to who can play a clean football game and not make those big turnovers.
I think, again, it's the contrast in styles where Michigan is going to want to keep the ball away from Washington and Michael Penix, and they're going to methodically drive down the field. And if they can put those 6, 7, 8-minute drives with Corum running and a lot of J.J. McCarthy's short passes, I think that really hurts Washington. If they can't, and Washington has that quick strike ability and they put some points on the board early, is Michigan built to come back from a deficit? I think it's a huge contrast in styles. I love the matchup. I think both teams are intriguing. They're fun to watch. And Michael Penix definitely improved, in my mind, to be a first-round draft pick in April.
My only added thing, and I think I told this to you a couple hours ago, the Pac-12 is essentially going away. And can the Pac-12 win a national championship and kind of their swan song of their conference? And strangely enough, we know that these two teams are going to play each other like
October 24th,
middle of
year.
October.
Right.
They'll play each other in a Big Ten matchup. So something for the Pac-12 to go away with maybe the conference winning a national title as it leaves this last year.
Maybe a little bit extra motivation for the Huskies in this game, knowing that that's the case and they can be the national championship from the Pac-12 in the last game ever played. So kind of intriguing a little bit. We're going to have a lot of cool props on this game too. So check out that on the app and, of course, in any of our race and sports books. But we're going to come right back and dive into Week 18 of the pro football season here on Bookends.
Guess what? It's football season, baby. And you know what that means? It's time to bet your buns off. And when it comes to sports betting, you better bet with the STN Sports app. I'm talking football, all the fights, men's and women's basketball, men's and women's soccer ball. We've got it all. And with our 14 convenient sign-up locations around town, it's no wonder they call me the Queen of Convenience. Because when I bet with STN, I feel like royalty. So what in the heck are you waiting for? Download the STN Sports app today and trust the local favorite.
Hey everybody, we're back at Red Rocks Racing Sportsbook. He's Jason, I'm Chucky for the Sports Betting Podcast Bookends. And it's hard to believe that the pro football season is done. I mean, we're week 18. I mean, it flew by. It seems like a long season, but now that we're week 18, when you look back, it really went by fast. Excuse me. We know it's a long season. To me, this week, there's really only 3 games that are kind of those marquee games that really mean something, maybe 4. But one is a huge rivalry game. It's Saturday. It's the early game. It's Steelers-Ravens. We know these two teams don't really like each other that much. Earlier this season, the Steelers win in Pittsburgh 17-10, which is the Ravens' smallest point total output this year. But it's a Raven team now that's 13-3, sits on top of the AFC North, arguably the best division in football. Steelers opened up a 4-point favorite, went to 3.5. It's creeping back up now because Lamar's not going to play. Who else won't play for Baltimore is an interesting kind of tidbit as well. But what do you think of this matchup here? Because if Pittsburgh wins, they're probably going to be in.
Yeah, and it's unique to see a team that's 13-3, that's a 4-point underdog at home.
Right.
And this is what Week 18 presents itself as. And I think the Ravens, this was the last thing they kind of wanted. Obviously, clinching the number 1 seed, definitely what you want. You want to be able to earn that bye week. But to now, they're the hottest team in football. They're playing. You talk about arguably the best division of football. There's no argument. The AFC North is the best division of football. We don't have a team that's under 500 as the Bengals sit 8-8. And that's without Burrow half the year. But this Raven team is absolutely on fire. They go into San Francisco and they win. They destroy the Dolphins. They haven't been playing with Mark Andrews, so this will be a chance for them to get healthy. I don't expect them to have a whole lot of their stars playing for very long. Tyler Huntley has been formidable as a starter and done a good job. But the Ravens don't really have to win this game. It really means nothing to them, and it means everything to the Steelers. They still have that chance to get into the playoffs sitting 8-8. They need to win this game. That's why they're the favorite. And I think that's why I was kind of putting this Saturday afternoon slot to give that Steelers a chance to go win it and then force those other AFC teams to kind of know what they need to do if the Steelers win this game. But it's unfortunate, again, Week 18 presents itself that we're not going to have Lamar here, and I think he's done enough. Despite the fact that he won't play Week 18, he's probably your MVP with the way that he's performed over the last couple weeks.
So a couple of interesting kind of tidbits when these two teams play. First, five straight times now when these two teams played, the game has gone under. So usually you don't expect a lot of scoring. Pittsburgh is also 6-1 straight up in their last 7 games against Baltimore. So even when it was top team against top team, nobody sitting out, Pittsburgh has really kind of owned the Ravens over the last 3 or 4 years. So a loss here, though, and Pittsburgh gets in, you never know. These two teams could play again, and it could be a Steeler team that would have beaten the Ravens twice. Now, fast forward to before the season started, John Harbaugh and the Ravens were dominant in preseason games, in games that really didn't mean anything. What is their approach? We know with Lamar resting, in a game here where they could potentially knock out their arch rivals, the Pittsburgh Steelers here, and end their season. So we'll see what happens, but still an intriguing matchup for the AFC North.
Yeah, and the Steelers have really kind of found their groove under Mason Rudolph the last 2 weeks. Pickens has been absolutely fantastic. Warren and Najee Harris have kind of found their stuff. So they've been, and not surprisingly that we find this Pittsburgh Steelers playing their best football when we get into December. That's that Mike Tomlin. I'm not going to end up with a losing season. They found a way to finish strong, and they're sitting in a great spot here with the Ravens being able to bench a couple of their players to go steal a win in Baltimore.
So another game on Saturday, the Saturday late game, is an AFC South battle with two teams, too, that have playoff aspirations, and that's the Texans and Colts. The game opened the Colts a favorite. This game's in Indy at 1-point favorite. It's now the Texans 1.5. These two teams played earlier this year as well. And in that game, Houston won 31-20. But this is an opportunity for one of these two teams maybe to sneak into the playoffs as a wild card team as well.
Yeah, and in that early matchup, Stroud kind of just getting used to what
Right.
the NFL was.
It was Richardson,
it was
too,
Anthony
though.
Richardson for the Colts, and then Minshew, came into that game. And so I don't know how much you can actually throw stock into that game. Colts have been playing much better of late with a couple wins here late, a big win over the Raiders last week in a game that they somewhat mismanaged the clock and let the Raiders kind of come back into that game. And Houston had really had a couple games where they slipped. They got beat by the Jets. They didn't get beat by the Jets. They got absolutely destroyed by the Jets, and they got absolutely destroyed by the Browns. But those games were with Davis Mills and Case Keenum, with Stroud being out, and then they come back with Stroud and have a big win. I think it was 26-3 last week over the Titans. So getting C.J. Stroud back in that locker room again. This is a chance to go to the playoffs, and even for the Colts, a chance to win the division if something should happen to the Jaguars. But I go back to 2 years ago. Colts had a chance to make the playoffs, and all they had to do was win, and they were going down to Jacksonville against a 2 and
not a good Jacksonville team, right?
14 Jacksonville team. I think it was Lawrence's rookie year, and the Jaguars knocked them out of the playoffs, and then forced some coaching changes and some guys getting fired there for the Colts. So very similar situation here for the Colts. Win a home game, and you're in the playoffs. But again, Houston with a slight favorite here, and I think that has to do with the development of C.J. Stroud.
We're going to be talking about a couple of NFC North teams a little bit later. That same scenario. You win and you're in, you lose and you're probably out, which happened last year. But a couple of betting trends for this game here. Excuse me. The total has gone under in 11 of Houston's last 14 games when playing on the road at Indy. The total has gone under in 6 of Houston's last 8 games when playing Indy. Yet when you look at Indy, the total has gone over 5 of Indy's last 5 home games, and a total has gone over in 5 of Indy's last 6 games as a whole. So Jacksonville has not been scoring a lot of points. Indy has. We'll see who it favorites in this game. Look at another game here, guys. We're going to jump and look at the Cowboys and Commanders. Cowboys win, and they're a number 2 seed in the NFC.
Yeah, I don't know that we need to spend a whole lot of time here. Cowboys are almost a 2-touchdown favorite. The Commanders have lost 7 straight. We know that we're going to see massive organizational changes going on with the Commanders. The Sam Howell experiment really kind of failed them.
Well, they draft number 2, so depending on what Chicago does at the top, or if they can move up, Caleb Williams is from the D.C. area. Drake May's in kind of the conversation too. I do expect the Commanders to be active draft night, either moving up or grabbing one of those 2 quarterbacks.
They really struggled last week against the San Francisco 49er team that really didn't try and do a whole lot on offense. They weren't throwing the football a lot. It was just handing the ball off left and right. Very generic offense in this Commander team. We saw them trade some of their defensive front guys, and kind of since that time it's just been really a downhill for the Commanders. And so maybe they can find a way to end the season on a high note with knocking off a division rival that's got a chance to go to the playoffs and earn a number 2 seed in the conference. But this is a Cowboy team that's been rolling and has had some hiccups here and there. But this connection from Prescott to CD Lamb's and the numbers they're been able to put up, and Lamb's setting Cowboy yardage records and reception records. So I would look for him to be a target of Dak in this game to kind of set those records and set the bar high.
And if you're the Commanders, you got beat on Thanksgiving, 45-10. And for the Cowboys, I mean, a win here, and they're the number 2 seed. They've won 16 straight games at home now, and you have an opportunity to play potentially 2 home games in the playoffs before you'd have to play in the NFC Championship game on the road. So kind of a big game for the Cowboys. It works out well for them. Eagles really kind of, hit a major speed bump down the stretch and left the door wide open for the Cowboys to move into that number 2 spot. Another game we'll look at now, Jay touched on it a little bit earlier, and that's the Jags. Jags and Titans. Jags win and they're in. They've really struggled down the stretch somewhat. They're actually a better road team than they are a home team. They're 5-2 this year on the road. As I said, they win and they win the South. They own tiebreakers over the Colts and Texans. Lawrence has been banged up. It looks like he'll be back here as we've seen this number start to tick up a bit, Jay.
Yeah, and the Titans got, we talked about it, beat up by the Texans last week. They come home. Mike Vrabel, his press conference, he was asked, what does the team need to do to get up in this game? And he made no qualms about it, that they're there to win. They want to win this game, try and knock off the Jaguars. And the Jaguars, you talked about it, they were projected to kind of walk away with this division.
7-3, I think, at one point.
Were dominant playing in London in those games. And then they've had the kind of Trevor Lawrence banged up here, and We saw C.J. Beathard play for them last week. And so if Lawrence is ready to go, this is a team that's got to find their groove. But really, they aren't having success in getting the ball downfield to Ridley or Kirk. It's kind of been...
And Lawrence hasn't had a great year.
Yeah, it's kind of been Travis Etienne, and the defense has had to come to play. But the Titans have really not had an offense, despite the fact that Will Levis came in and looked the part. They just haven't been able to score with him, and the downfield threat to Hopkins. We're seeing the tread maybe coming off of the Derrick Henry train and not able to run the football, and that defense just hasn't been there. So this is a spot why we see the Jaguars a small favorite on the road. But if Lawrence is here, this game might leak up a little bit. And obviously a huge game for the Jaguars is as they win this game, they're the end of the playoffs. They win the division. So
and they host the playoff game.
So a big game for them. But again, we talked about teams playing that spoiler role, especially in divisional games. There's no way the Titans are just going to lay down here. You're going to see an effort and with nothing to lose. So this is also a situation where you see teams with fake punts and trick plays and everything that they can do to try and end the season on a high note.
So a couple of betting trends here, and as we said, we think that Lawrence is going to play here. We've started to see this number tick up a little bit. Jacksonville 9-2 against the number of their last 11 road games. As I said, they've been a better road team than a home team the last 2 years. Total has gone over in 4 of Jacksonville's last 5 games when playing on the road at Tennessee. Yet Tennessee is 8-1 straight up in its last 9 games when playing at home against Jacksonville. So a couple of trends here that kind of favor both teams. We'll see how it works out, but a much bigger game for the Jags than the Titans, who are just looking to play the role of a spoiler. This next game, NFC North battle. We kind of talked about the AFC North and the rivalry with the Steelers and the Ravens. To me, this is a rivalry. Well, I guess if you ask Aaron Rodgers, it's not, because if one team can't beat the other, it's not a rivalry. It's Packers and Bears. Last year, Packers, all they had to do, Week 18, was win at home in Lambeau on Sunday night, the last game, and the Detroit Lions went in there and beat them. Now, the Bears can't make the postseason, but they can knock the Green Bay Packers out. It's a Bears team now that's been on fire. I think they're 5-1 in their last 6 games. Easily could have won 7 in a row. Defensively, they're playing good, but this is a Packer team that owns them. They've won 8 straight games. Jordan Love is playing really well. They played early in the season, Week 1 actually, to kick off the season. Bears had high hopes. They got beat 38-20 in that game. Packers, again, have just dominated the Bears, but this is a huge game for both teams. Packers to get into the playoffs, Bears to build for next year, see if they keep Justin Fields, and oh by the way, the Bears are on the clock as well for the April draft.
Yeah, and the Packers coming off a big win at Minnesota. Again, Minnesota had started Jaron Hall in the game, made the quarterback change late in the game, but kind of out of hand by that time. Packers able to win that game. Jordan Love has absolutely developed as the season has gone on. He's found these young wide receivers. Watson has missed some time. Jaden Reed left that game against Minnesota. So check the availability of the Green Bay Packers wide receivers. Musgrave, the tight end, has been out. Kraft has been absolutely fantastic from that standpoint. And lo and behold, Aaron Jones, who's missed the entire first half of the season, is finally kind of healthy and running the football, and that's where they're having success. But the Bears, I can make an argument outside of the Ravens and the way that they've been playing lately. And the Bills have won 4 straight, but they've been somewhat tight games with some craziness about. But the Chicago Bears are arguably the hottest team in the National Football League. You talked about them winning 3 straight, but in the last 7, they blew a 10-point lead to the Cleveland Browns that they lost, and they blew a 12-point fourth quarter lead to the Detroit Lions. If those 2 games, if they find a way to hold on to those 2 games, they've won 7 straight games. And you go back another one to the 8th, they were tied in the fourth quarter against the Saints with Tyson Bagent at quarterback. So
and they blew a 21-point lead against the Broncos in Week 4, which seems a long time ago.
We were clamoring for Eberflus and this team, and that they needed a massive change. And who knows what they're going to do in the offseason with Justin Fields. But this team has found something both defensively and offensively. Moore has been exceptional at wide receiver. They're running the football. Fields is running the football. And the defense, since acquiring Sweat from the Commanders, the secondary has been good. You go look at their amount of points that they've allowed. They've actually been under 20 points in several games, and they had a record streak of allowing over 25 points for a long, long time. So the Bears have really turned the corner, and I'm excited to see what they do next year. And obviously next year is going to be a lot about what they do in the draft. But I think this is a great spot for the Bears to play spoiler against a team that they would love to play spoiler against. And you talk about it. every other team in the NFC that has those hopes to somehow sneak into the playoffs, it all hones in on the Packers, because if the Packers win, the NFC spots are all locked up.
And not to dwell too much on this game, but you think about teams that pick number one. It's usually a team that's really bad. This is a Bears team that's really trending in the right direction right now, and because of that trade, they're going to have an opportunity if they want to flip the switch and move to a Caleb Williams or a Drake May, or if they want to trade that pick and get a haul. We've heard rumblings that teams will give up, multiple number ones, including this year's and other picks as well, that really can restock that entire franchise. So they're in a great spot, but this is the game, I think, for Eberflus and for Justin Fields. You can go into Green Bay, Week 18, you haven't beaten them in 8 straight games, and knock them out of the playoffs. It puts you in a different mindset, and that whole, building, Hallis Hall in the offseason, is all about, they just beat the Green Bay Packers. We can't wait for 2024. Another game we're going to look at now. Well, let me just give you some betting trends for this one really quick, though. Bears, as Jay said, 5-1 against the spread last 6 games, 4-1 straight up last 5 games. Green Bay, 5-0 straight up in their last 5 games of playing the Bears, and 5-0 against the number in their last 5 games of playing the Bears. They've actually beaten them 8 straight. So now we're going to look at the AFC South just really quick, or NFC South really quick. Just touch on that. The Bucs, the whole division is 500 or below. Bucs control their own destiny. They get a win here, and the Bucs are in.
Yeah, and they travel to Carolina in a game that they opened a 6-point favorite. We've taken some sharp money on Carolina. Tampa did not look good in a chance to secure the division last week in a home loss to the Saints. Saints, I want to say it was 22-0 or 23-0, and Tampa came back, scored a couple late touchdowns. But really, Tampa had the big win in Green Bay and then kind of went and laid an egg this week at home against the Saints. Now they travel to Carolina. Obviously, we know the situation with the Panthers with only 2 wins. Their owner's throwing drinks on people, but they only lost by 3 points to this Bucs team. And boy, what a way to end the season would be to knock off the Bucs here, and then it would open the door for both the Falcons and Saints, who play each other, with a chance to steal the division. So I don't see Carolina laying down. They've been in this situation all year long. Chuba Hubbard did have success, ran for over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns in the matchup. The last time, Mike Evans had over 162 yards and a touchdown for the Bucs in this matchup. So I don't think it's easy. And we talk about this spoiler roll, spoiler roll. Having to go on the road against a team that you're supposed to beat with all the pressure in the world on your shoulders to win this game and get in the playoffs has not been a successful propositions for a lot of teams, and I think that's why we saw some early sharp money on the Panthers.
I think it's a big game for Baker Mayfield, too. There's already been some rumblings that Tampa's interested in bringing him back again next year. But I think for Carolina, like you said, some of these teams, like if it's Tennessee, if it's Chicago, teams that can play the role of a spoiler, it really kind of changes the mindset going into next year. All the struggles that Carolina's had, they don't have the number 1 pick. But a win here, I think, really helps that team. A couple of betting trends with this one, guys. Tampa 7-1 against the number their last 8 games on the road, 6-1 straight up in their last 7 games when playing Carolina. Total has gone under in 6 of Carolina's last 7 home games and 8 of Carolina's last 10 games overall. So Carolina has not been scoring a lot of points as well this season. Now we're going to look at the Sunday night game. I mean, you couldn't ask for a better game. The marquee game, the Buffalo Bills travel to play the Miami Dolphins. We know the Dolphins are a little bit banged up. The Bills are on a hot streak right now. Winner wins the AFC East. Loser is a wild card team. Both teams have massive home field advantages. The Bills 7-2 at home this year. The Dolphins 7-1 at home this year. The Dolphins only lost on Monday Night Football in a game they led in the 4th quarter against the Titans by 14 points. They lost by 1 point. Their only home loss by 1 point. Yet they're getting 3 here against the Buffalo Bills in what is the biggest game of the week for both these 2 teams.
Yeah, and you talk about why they're a dog in this game at home, where they've been so successful at home and are an underdog. It's because of the injuries that they're facing. Last week they got beat up against the Baltimore Ravens, and literally they got beat up against the Baltimore Ravens. A couple of their players are injured. Now, crazy enough, a story today where Tyreek Hill's home in South Florida caught fire, so that's another distraction that he'll be facing there. But Dolphins, this is again all they could be asking for is a chance to win the division with a home game against this Bills team.
Any team would ask that.
And their offense has been electric, whether it's been with Tyreek Hill in, with Waddle in, Mostert in, a chain. They've got all the weapons in the world to have success. They're going to have to play a little bit better defense here to be able to steal the game, and they're also going to have to create turnovers. The Bills lose games when you're able to get pressure on Josh Allen and force him into turnovers. The worst part about the Bills team is their offensive line. When you're able to get pressure on Allen, that's when you're able to have success against the Bills. If you're not able to get pressure on him, he's going to find a lot of success. However, they haven't had a lot of success, and when we talk about the Buffalo Bills, it's always in your head, Stephon Diggs. But Stephon Diggs has not had a 100-yard receiving game since week 6. He has not had over 50 yards receiving.
He was on my fantasy
in
team
the last
right now.
4 weeks, he hasn't had over 50 yards. The last 4 weeks, he hasn't scored a touchdown. So for the Bills to get right, if the Bills are going to make any type of run, they've got to find a way for Stephon Diggs to get involved in this offense. They made the offensive coordinator change 4 or 5 weeks ago. It really started to develop James Cook more in the offense. They've been dominating running game, finding him out of the backfield. But this is a game against this Dolphins defense where you're going to have to find Gabe Davis, you're going to have to find Diggs, you're going to have to find Kincaid, and you're going to have to run the ball with Josh Allen. And I think we can see potentially an up and down the field type game here if things go right and Tua is able to kind of match score for score.
When these two teams played earlier in the season in Buffalo, where weather wasn't an element, it was much earlier in the season, Bills won 48-20 in that game. So they ran all over the Dolphins. I think we saw the Dolphins against the Ravens really have some struggles in the back end. They're going to be playing without Howard. Chubb's not in this game, so they're really behind the 8 ball a little bit defensively, but they're at home again. They're one loss by 1 point. They've been really dominant in Miami so far this year.
You brought up that game week 4. Bills won 48-20 at home against this Miami team. In that game, that was the week after the Miami Dolphins put up 70 on the Denver Broncos. And so they were feeling all good and warm and fuzzy about themselves, putting up those 70 points, and then had to travel up to a Buffalo team that was saying, hey, welcome to Buffalo. You ain't putting 70 on us. And so it was a meeting of two teams at very key times that I think kind of set the tone for that game, and that's why the Bills came out there. I think the Miami Dolphins are going to be much more ready for this game than they potentially were in that traveling to Buffalo in that situation.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think, again, it goes back to what we kind of talked about earlier. Whoever wins this game, I mean, gets that home game, gets a home playoff game, maybe potentially 2 home playoff games. You think no team wants to go travel in mid to late January to Buffalo, and Miami, you can make a case as one of the most dominant home teams we've seen this year. So this is a huge game for both teams. I think it's going to take a lot to push this game off of 3. We opened at 3. It really hasn't moved. I think the only reason the Bills are the favorite is because they've been so hot. Miami's been a little bit banged up and hasn't played as well over the last month of the season. So guys, it's a great Week 18. We've got the College Football Championship game coming up. We've got a new app that's updated with so many cool and exciting features. So it's a great time right now to get signed up. If you don't have the app, come in and check everything out we have to offer. And Happy New Year. And one more thing, we have an unofficial winner to LMS, Last Man Standing, the pro football contest. One lucky winner, $150,000 he won. College, we had 3 guys that split it. One lucky winner in Last Man Standing. Going into this week, he had the Ravens, who won easy. The other guy who was up against him had the Rams minus 4.5. That punt return, enough said. But congratulations again, one lucky winner in Last Man Standing, $150,000. Anything you want to add before we?
No, I'm excited. I mean, we talk about all this football, and we don't even mention that we're full swing in the NBA, the NHL.
Right.
Golf is ready to get, the PGA Tour is ready to get underway this week. So just so much action to fill that ad up. So many betting opportunities for you, and just so much stuff going on that it's just one of those best times of year.
We can't contain ourselves.
Between the playoffs and we're already having our Super Bowl preparation meetings to get ourselves ready. So this next month is just a super exciting period of time that, again, and get the app, get a chance to put the app in the palm of your hand and have some fun betting on these games.
Yep, guys. So again, for Jason and I, Happy New Year. We were gone for a couple of weeks. We're glad to be back. We'll be having this podcast every week during the playoffs and leading up to the Super Bowl with a lot of cool props and a lot of cool things to discuss. So we'll see you guys next week again. Have fun this week. Good luck. Enjoy the championship game and Week 18. And we'll catch you next week on Bookends.